Look out for the big Co-op price cut in your local store now. Co-op is...
Who follow social distancing guidelines. Offer ends 30th of November. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas and Boiler. Conditions apply. British Gas and Heating Limited is a credit broker and uses a panel of lenders. Everyone's heard of My Pillow. After all, they've sold 48 pillows worldwide. And here's how. Ancestry is making millions of UK war records free.
Is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Here he is, Steve Baker MP. Though I voted against England's second national lockdown, we must comply, which I think is probably a rather good example of trying to have your cake and eat it. Why must we comply if it's not necessary? Well, because it's law. Oh, okay. But you're voting for it not to be law. I mean, it's semantic, but why is Boris Johnson doing it? Because he has been persuaded that every other option would be even worse. Why are right-wing blowhard columnists claiming that there's a big army of cheerleaders for the lockdown? Answer, because A, they're not honest, and B, they don't know what to do when a right-wing Prime Minister is not doing what Rupert and the Daily Mail tell him to do, or want him to do. They literally don't. Oh, I don't get this at all. Okay. For why Boris Johnson is doing the wrong thing. What are his motivations? 0, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What would you like to say?
Several comments really. First of all, I think there's a huge north-south divide in the way that this is being managed. So take, for example, at the end of August, the R rate in Liverpool was running between 0.8 and 1.1. So there was still active viral spread, despite the fact that Liverpool has really been under some sort of lockdown for 3 months. And then obviously, with people travelling, the last time the pandemic happened, it started from the south, went to the north, now it's going from the north to the south. I also think track and trace, it's appalling, we've handed this probably the most important part of getting this pandemic under control over to private providers.
That seems to have been a big error. Whether it was an error that could have been predicted in advance, we'll never know, but a lot of people did predict it in advance.
Well, I think we can answer that by saying that, the government has a lot of friends in the circle, don't they? So there you go. That's just me being a bit kind of ironic. I also think that, that should have been handed over to Public Health England. Anybody who doesn't believe that COVID doesn't exist needs to go to a hospital and look at ITU, look at HTU, look at all the wards. Nobody at the moment, anybody who's ringing in saying this isn't a threat,
Well, I don't really take calls like that on this programme because it would be like ringing in to claim that the moon was made of cheese, but I know that these people are out there. I need to steer you towards the conversation we are actually having, which is why do people think Boris Johnson would do the wrong thing? That's the bit I struggle with most.
I think he's doing the right thing.
I know he is, but people keep saying there's a bunch of Tory MPs voting against the lockdown yesterday. What do they think he's got wrong?
They're delusional, because
You can't have that. You think you are the presenter. You can't just call the people you disagree with delusional. You've got to give me more detail. Yeah, quite right too. You've got to give me more detail and reason.
Because they're thinking more about the economy than the NHS.
But they're not, though. They say they are, but a 4-week lockdown's much, much worse for the economy than the 2-week lockdown to which they were also opposed.
Well, also not having a sustainable NHS is also equally as much as a problem.
And not having a functioning test and trace system despite spending £2 billion on it and sticking Dodo Harding in charge.
Absolutely. And, you know, what people aren't also realising is the impact that I think this is too much too late as opposed to too little too soon, if that makes any sense.
I don't know if it's too much, but it's later than it needed to be. I think we can all agree on that. So that's why Johnson is resisting these backbench rebellions, because he knows that they're wrong. And you know, the people who can't quite work out what day of the week it is until Rupert Murdoch tells them are blowing in the wind a bit, claiming that there's this massive army of enthusiastic pro-lockdown people that you and I know, and everybody with their eyes open knows doesn't exist, because if you can't turn it into some left versus right or leave versus remain, or if you can't turn it into a ludicrous binary battle, you don't know what to do. And when it's a choice between several bad options, it's the opposite of a binary battle, isn't it?
But this pandemic has now been active in the UK since the beginning of March is when we first started seeing the first incidences rise in the UK. And where are we? Where are we 6 months later?
Well, we're still in the top 5 or 6 deaths in the world, and infection rates rising.
100,000 population, and also, you know, the incidents per 100,000 and hospitalisations per 100,000 population. You know, we are meant to be a developed, forward-thinking country, and by giving the responsibility of, you know, such simple things like test and trace, testing.
You see, you're doing it again, and I'm not going to get cross with you, but this is not the phone-in that you're looking for.
But what we need to be accountable for this.
I know, I've had this phone in 30 times. That's how I know it's not the one that you're looking for today. Because I'm trying to work out today the motivation either of people maligning the lockdown or the supposed motivation of Boris Johnson for bringing it in.
I think people maligning the lockdown are being very self-centred. It's kind of not in my backyard.
Well, I will be more generous. I will be more generous than you, and I will say that somebody comes along and tells you that things aren't complicated and dangerous, despite all the evidence to the contrary. That's a very seductive offer, you know, and it takes fairly momentous events sometimes to shake people out of the complacency that invites. Someone turns up and says, "Oh, there is no plague," you know. You can see why that is an offer many of us would be keen to take up. I perhaps lean the other way, but that's psychological. I can't criticise someone else's psychology. Someone tells me that it's raining, I'll stick my head out the window and see whether it's raining or not. Other people, someone tells them that they've got nothing to worry about, they will shut the curtains and cling to the person who's telling them that there's nothing to worry about, because if they open the curtains and stick their head out the window, it might get bitten off. God, the analogies are coming thick and fast today. Emma, thank you. As it stands, I was going to move on from lockdown stuff to Trump stuff in the second hour, or possibly move on to whether or not teachers feel safe in schools. That's another question I'd like to know the answer to. I'm thinking more coronavirus rather than America, but we'll do some hits and we'll do some catch-up with the situation in America, and we'll definitely bring you any news of declarations as and when they happen. But if you've enjoyed my evolving attempts to define everything in the terms of slightly comical analogies, then you'll know which one kicked in last night on an astonishing scale. Toss a coin, shout heads and tails, and then however it lands, do a quick lap of honour. And what did we see yesterday in America? We saw Donald Trump supporters shouting, "Count the votes" in Arizona, and shouting, "Stop the count" in Detroit. the same supporters, or rather supporters of the same person, calling for votes to be counted where they think their man's got a chance of winning, and calling for votes not to be counted where they think their chap is losing. Quite incredible. The most perfect proof ever of James O'Brien's theory of the tossed coin. But, of course, people who are there chanting either X or the polar opposite of X while believing still that they're on the same team aren't quite ready to acknowledge the scale of the con yet. Hopefully, more and more of us in this country now are.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation, this is LBC.
Of COVID-19. The restrictions are in place until the 2nd of December, but the Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, has admitted that could be extended.
You can't rule anything out of this crisis, and the Prime Minister has said that from day one. You know, this is one of those moments where sadly we've had to slam the brakes on. But we believe that having this longer period will do a lot to minimise the risk of having further stop-start lockdowns, which I think could be more disruptive.
Joe Biden is edging towards winning the US presidential election, but it's still too early to say for certain as counting continues. Donald Trump's already filed legal challenges in at least 3 states. He's complaining of fraud and doesn't think his teams are being given enough access to places where the counting is happening, but he hasn't provided any evidence. Wisconsin-based Democrat Chris Walton says a recount in his state could take weeks.
It depends due to the amount of votes. This year we've had a historically high amount of votes. So it would depend on how many people we would need to count through the 3.2 million votes. But it would be done before December 14th when the Electoral College will meet.
A second man has been charged with the murder of a 36-year-old who was shot on his doorstep in southwest London. Swedish national Tobias Fredrik Andersson was extradited from his home country yesterday over the shooting in Battersea last Christmas Eve. Sainsbury's has confirmed it's cutting 3,500 jobs. The supermarket is going to permanently shut its meat, fish and deli counters. It's also closing some arms stores. AstraZeneca has confirmed it expects to present the data from its COVID-19 vaccine being developed with the University of Oxford by the end of the year. It comes as the drugs firm revealed its profit is set to double to £654 million in the last year. Playing computer games during the pandemic. The Japanese company behind Super Mario and Pokemon says its profits for the 6 months to September reached £1.5 billion. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading up 23 points at 59.06. The pound buys €1.10 and $1.30. The weather, fog patches in the south, slowly clearing, then fine with some good sunshine this afternoon, but staying chilly for many. Cloudier in the northwest with some drizzle, a high of 12 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Holly Harris.
Business right now is anything but usual. At Square, we can help you sell in more ways. Whether you run a beauty salon, barbershop or nail bar, you can set up a free website and take payments online or by digital invoices. We can help you take contactless payments in person too, and you'll get your money the next business day, with no long-term commitments, so you're ready for whatever's next. See everything we can do at square.com/UK. Square Up Europe Limited is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 11 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where most criticism of the suggestion that this lockdown is being resisted by people who don't want the taps turned off, people who make money out of you and me going to work, not people who make money out of themselves going to work, seems to completely overlook the furlough scheme. So there is going to be economic impact and there is going to be economic harm, but it's not going to come as a result of you not being able to go to work. because the furlough scheme is filling much of that hole for most people. I do fully appreciate the existence of people who haven't been reached by Rishi Sunak's schemes, but don't let people mislead you. Don't let wealth persuade poverty to use its political power to keep wealth in power. Political strength even to keep wealth in power. So, 0345 606 0973 is the number you need to continue speculating with me about what possible motives people presume Boris Johnson is operating under. If he's not doing this to protect the NHS and help keep us alive, why is he doing it? 0345 606 0973. And then I would like to move your attention along a little to the question of teachers and a question that was raised by a caller to this programme earlier this week, a local authority lawyer, to be precise, who is married to a teacher, and he expressed very profound concerns that we might be exposing teachers to not only unacceptable and unnecessary risk, but also quite possibly illegal risk. And this, in the current climate, with this lot in charge, seems to me to be perfectly feasible. So how do we discuss it together? I guess we have to acknowledge from the outset that every school is different. Every head teacher has handed out or interpreted the guidelines differently. As far as I can tell, there are some rules which are to be obeyed by everybody, but some head teachers have elected independently to go further than the requirements that are laid out in the law. I don't know what's happening at schools. This isn't even a conversation I've had with my own children with regards to PPE and teaching, but I found that conversation disturbing would be a little bit strong, deeply troubling. Actually, no, it probably was a little bit disturbing. And when you look at these battles, these confected battles, these fake battles that we're still having even as a global pandemic. I mean, look at America, 230,000 people dead, and Donald Trump's still got tens of millions of votes. He got more votes than he got 4 years ago. You know, his line about being able to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose a single vote didn't go far enough. He can actually kill hundreds of thousands of people via his incompetence and dishonesty and get more votes than he got before. It was irrefutable that his failure to address coronavirus has caused thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths. I don't genuinely find it baffling, even as I find it utterly predictable and ploddingly obvious that this was going to happen. So I think we probably will end up having to close the schools at some point. And God only knows what's going to happen next. It's not hard to say that. Politicians can't say it quite as clearly as we can to each other. But why do so many ordinary Joes and Joannes, like you and me, why do we feel the need to cling to false certainty? I've got no idea what's going to happen next. If I was a betting man, I think we'll carry on after December the 2nd, because these incubation periods and these infection rates are unknowable, but there is a strong sense in my mind that we've behaved a bit irresponsibly together, all of us. Whether I wouldn't necessarily blame Eat Out to Help Out per se, because that puts all establishments in the same pot. Pardon the pun. And some establishments did it really, really well, and others didn't. You know, either because they didn't have the bodies, they didn't have the staff, or they didn't have the leadership, the management. As in a pub, so in politics, you know. It's only as good as the people that are on the ground. So you know and I know, because we all went out during that period of post-lockdown liberty. We all took advantage of the Eat Out to Help Out schemes, and we were very positive about them on this programme, but in retrospect, we probably should have paid more attention to the places that weren't doing it well. I think back to one particular place, one of my all-time favourite places in Norfolk, and they didn't open on day one. And actually, they didn't do Eat Out to Help Out. They didn't do the half-price bit. It was just my luck, really. But I had a chat with the sort of manager, because I think we went on day one or day two of them opening, which was middle of the week after they could have opened. And I always remember how, I think frightened would be too strong a word, but it hadn't occurred to me how nervous they would be. And new punters would be nervous. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that this was a widespread failure. It was my failure, and I'm owning it. I'm just sharing it with you. the nervousness of the workers, the nervousness of the management of this place, because they really wanted to get it right, because that's the kind of establishment it is, and that's the kind of people they are. And I went to other places where one in particular, I don't think it would be appropriate to identify it to you. We sat outside because inside didn't seem to be observing the sort of rules and regulations as closely as we would have felt comfortable with. And then you could go to two pubs in a single afternoon and have two completely different policies in place with regard to everything, from whether or not you were registering your contact details at the door, to pay with cash or whatever. Do you see what I mean? So it would be unfair to malign Eat Out to Help Out per se, but clearly the scheme took too much on good faith, and a lot of establishments, some quite blatantly, ended up getting shut down or investigated, but a lot of establishments didn't go as far as they were supposed to go, let alone, my personal position is always go even further. What have you got to lose on this? And that is partly the reason why we are where we are. So I think we'll probably go beyond December the 2nd, and I think, but I don't know, that at some point the kids probably will be sent home from school again. And again, I think I'm quite frustrated by this because I'm so conscious of the damage we've done to each other and our countries by listening to liars and by listening to blowhards. They'll turn that into another manufactured battle. You might want the schools to close because you think that will be safer, but you don't want the schools to close because you want the schools to close. So if it comes to this again, with ludicrous, tub-thumping debates about whether or not the postcode in which you're doing your daily work is a matter of epic importance, or whether or not you're doing your daily work is a matter of importance to your employers, it's also fake and false and stupid. But I don't think we've got any other way of doing things in this country at the moment. So when the question comes around again, people will try to persuade you that those who are reluctantly accepting of the apparent need to close schools are somehow your enemy, because nobody wants to close schools, nobody wants to go into lockdown, nobody wants it to last beyond December the 2nd, but politicians have to make difficult and that is where we are now. Better late than never. So, what is going on in your schools? 0345 6060973. And that is a really big, broad question. The goalposts could hardly be further apart. If you're a teacher, are you scared? And if I said to you, well, there's nothing to stop you wearing your own PPE, even if it's not policy, you might come back to me and say, actually, we've been told not to. This is what our lawyer earlier in the week, Charles, in Worcestershire, was worried about. He felt that some teachers might have been put in dangerous and indeed illegal positions by head teachers or local education authorities that were not doing everything they could to protect teachers from catching coronavirus. And of course, the hop from catching to passing on is a very short hop indeed. So let's do schools. Underpinning our conversation this hour is that suspicion that they probably will be shut again, and that the usual suspects with their toolbox containing a rusty spanner and a knackered old set square will try and turn it into a culture war or a fight or a bovine binary battle, and the rest of us will try and point out that there is no enemy, nobody wants to do this, it's not like leave and remain. It's like a selection of bad options. It's not one rubbish option and one good option, and somehow we've ended up voting for the rubbish one. This is a selection of bad options, the least bad of which the people we have put in power have decided is this. I can't believe this stuff needs explaining. 13 minutes after 11, Gilly's in Hendon to start the schools conversation. Gilly, what would you like to say?
So, hello, good morning, James. What I'd like to say is that I agree with basically everything you said. The teachers are going into the lines there every day.
It's not what I've said, it's what Charles told us earlier in the week, and I always enjoy a compliment, Gilly, but I have to confess I had no clue prior to that conversation, so I'm merely relaying his concerns, which you clearly recognise.
I definitely do. My issue is not just about it's about the teaching staff. Let me just tell you my story. I've got a 16-and-a-half-year-old son who's in year 12. He's been going to school every day. On Saturday he came back. He's not feeling well. He's now been tested positive for COVID. And that brought to my attention the fact that we, as his parents, who are in our late 50s, are now being vulnerable. You know, we have been exposed to this. We have been so strict with the way we've run our, you know, we're very worried about getting COVID. I've got elderly parents. And I feel that the schools, particularly, I completely endorse the fact that younger children have to go to school. But I think that children of a certain age who are, you know, who can be at home and learning online, that the government should make arrangements so that people in our position, parents who are vulnerable, are not exposed to this risk every single day.
Why? I mean, two questions. Why do younger children have to be in school?
I tell you what I think. I think that with the younger children, their parents are going to be younger.
Yes, of course.
If they do get COVID, then the chances are that they'll probably be fine.
Oh, I see. So yeah, I mean, they could still pass it on to people who wouldn't be, which is the other part of your concern. But as I keep reminding everybody else, you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So there's going to have to be some take as well as give. So a teenage boy, 16-and-a-half, he's, you know, he's pretty much finished growing, hasn't he?
Yeah, but he's doing A-levels. He's got to sit and study. Half the day they're not working anyway. So why send them in? Well, you know, I think the schools need to say, okay, we expect that some children need to be in school, have to be in school, and the teachers need to be protected. And
that's the point, isn't it? And I don't think teachers are fair. We'll find out. We'll speak to some, but I don't think teachers are feeling very protected, are they, at the moment?
No, they're not. And I have to tell you something else. I've got a sister-in-law who's a school secretary, and she also feels, and she's in her early 60s, and she also feels extremely exposed. It's not just the teachers, it's all the other staff that go into school every day. The cooks, the receptionists, all these people are being exposed on a daily basis.
And they look at other professions, and although teaching is unique and it is a public service, it's not an emergency service, so they will be looking at colleagues or friends or family members who are office workers or who are shop workers, and they'll be thinking, well, hang on a minute, if they are being told to stay at home and we're being told to go to work, and I don't want you to embarrass your sister, but the response to asking not to work would presumably not be very accommodating.
She's trying to kind of say, I want to put more protective, you know, in place. But then you've got a child who falls down in the playground, who comes down bleeding.
Needs a plaster. Yeah.
But
and are the little ones wearing masks? Do we know?
No, none of the children in primary schools are wearing masks. Right. Actually, none of the high school kids are wearing masks. My child is in a year of probably 80, 90 kids. They're mixing. You know, they have to sit down and speak to. You know, track and trace about how many people he's been exposed to. It was really an amazing education group that hadn't really got there. Honestly, I had to send an email to the school of how many children, you know, how many of these children are now at home. You know, quarantine. I think they have to, you know, put in place so that some kids, let's minimise the danger.
Well, I think on this one there are clear and present problems with your position, but as I say, once you acknowledge that you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, there is not a solution to this that is going to keep everybody happy. There is give and there is take, and the question why every single school child needs to stay in school while every other comparable context is in lockdown does become acute. It doesn't mean you're right or I'm right or anyone's right. It's a question that should have been more satisfactorily answered, perhaps. Thank you, Julie. I hope your lad feels better soon. It was a week for me, flat on my back, very little food, just fluids, but we're back on form, or what passes for form. In my case, relatively quickly, and I hope he has the same experience. Tell him to chill, though, if they understand what that word means in 2020. 18 after 11.
The fight against coronavirus.
Until the start of December, you must stay at home. I'm under no illusions about how difficult this will be.
For the very latest, stay with LBC.
The moment you realise that cold radiator isn't warming up, then you'll be working from home in your coat and gloves. the moment you realise you've British Gas home care boiler cover. From just 46p a day, you're covered for both parts and labour, and of course, we'll follow social distancing guidelines. Buy selected home care products online by the 25th of November and get 1 month free. British Gas, here to solve such British Gas home care. Conditions apply. Prices may vary by postcode.
At Nissan, we integrate innovation and technology into our cars to help you live richer. To make your drive a lot less and a lot more. To find the Nissan that's right for you, join us at our Innovation Celebration event from the 2nd to the 30th of November and get an extra £500 deposit contribution towards a Nissan Juke, Qashqai and X-Trail, available at 4.99% APR representative. Search Nissan. Available on PCP Nissan Finance. Order by 30th November. Register by 17th December. Participating dealers only. Excludes Vizia. T's and C's apply. Visit nissan.co.uk.
I know it's here somewhere. I just had the tab open. But which one? There's a million. Oh, not that one. Not that one. Where are you, you shiny little phone? Oh, no. Search history. Oh, get rid of that. And that. Delete.
Your search is over. Our best ever Black Friday is here. Save up to £400 on the stunning Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. Search or till Black Friday.
On select terrace, £40 off device plan and £360 airtime discount based on 36-month contract. O2 Refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited. Eligibility and terms apply.
Lorraine here runs her own hot yoga business. She'd rather be working on her warrior pose than on her finances. That's why she got QuickBooks. Now she can get paid, track income, and run payroll all in one place. Because no matter how hot the yoga studio gets, running her business is no sweat. Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. Intuit QuickBooks.
Betfair Casino launches brand new slot games every week. They're so new, if they were a car, they'd smell fantastic. So new, if they were a pair of trainers, they'd be brighter than the sun. So new, if they were a dog, they would still be peeing on the carpet. Feel the feeling of brand new newness and get 50 free spins with Betfair Casino now.
Free spins apply to new Betfair Casino customers only. Available on selected games. T's and C's at betfair.com. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
Hey, Ria. What's it like being the boss?
So many decisions to make, Kev.
Like whether to switch to EE's business full works plan for iPhone?
That was an easy one. I mean, the unlimited data's a must-have. And I get to watch Apple TV Plus when it's time to unwind.
I bet you love bopping along to Apple Music, too.
I've got some moves.
Oh, yeah? Like this, you mean?
Not a work time, Kev.
Get EE's business full works plan for iPhone or get Plan Envy.
T's and C's apply. Check coverage at ee.co.uk/coverage. Experience may vary by location.
Oh, glorious food! I'm hungry for some more. Meals for every mood. My pizza's already at the door.
Meerkat Meals, now with 50% off pizzas at Papa John's and Pizza Hut delivery for a whole year. Only with the Meerkat app.
Wonderful food! Glorious!
Qualifying purchase one membership a year, £30 minimum spend. App only, geo restrictions and T's and C's apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with James O'Brien.
22 minutes after 11 is the time. I possibly needs explaining to some people, although you know my problem with working out who's pretending not to understand things versus people who genuinely need a little bit of help understanding things. The postal vote scenario in America that Donald Trump is squealing about is a result of Republican Party policy. So the 3 states in particular that are still in focus are states where Republican legislatures elected not to start counting votes until election day. Slightly different detail from one state to the next, but it is a decision taken by Republican politicians. Okay, so you can be fairly confident that Donald Trump is pretending not to understand that, and he goes, why are you voting for? And also, why would Democrats be more likely to vote by post? Because they've watched 230,000 people die and understand that it was caused by a coronavirus. Donald Trump supporters, of course, are more likely to believe him when he claims it can be fixed with disinfectant, or that it's all going to disappear, or that it's a hoax, or that it's not that bad, or that it's nearly over and the numbers are negligible. So these things are not even vaguely complicated. But of course, Donald Trump's modus operandi is so completely corrupt that he now has supporters outside one counting centre calling for the counting to stop, and supporters outside another counting centre calling for the counting to continue. Count the votes, stop the count. By people wearing the same scarf. That's what happens when footballification becomes almost a national sport. So, just in order to introduce some good common sense and honesty to proceedings, I thought we'd hear a few words from Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Julie Hart.
Not a single Republican has been able to look at any one of these mail ballots. They could be from Mars, as far as we're concerned, or they could be from the Democratic National Committee. Joe Biden could have voted 50 times, as far as we know, or 5,000 times. Philadelphia, unfortunately, I would say this about my own city, has a reputation for voter fraud. We have a reputation for dead people voting, and we're going to go look at just how many dead people voted here.
Okay, Rudy. Actually, while we're on the subject, should we just check in on the lady who's leading the prayer meeting for Donald Trump? Because I you know, there's a lot of madness out there at the moment. It's good to see some. It's good to see, or indeed hear some sanity. So, thank whatever God you believe in for Paula White.
I hear a sound of victory. I hear a sound of shouting and singing. I hear a sound of victory. Santa ata ambo osa kata rite eke banda ata rite tibi ashata. The angels have even been dispatched from Africa right now. Africa right now. Africa right now. From Africa right now. They're coming here. They're coming here. In the name of Jesus. From South America. They're coming here. They're coming here.
Amen. Paula White appointed as a spiritual advisor to the White House by Donald Trump. Holy McMoley, I think, is the only phrase that I feel fits the bill this current moment in time. Good to hear from his lawyer and his spiritual advisor there, sounding completely sane. Ben's in Haringey to take us back to school. Ben, what would you like to say?
Well, my background is 40 years as facilities manager and also 35 years as school governor.
Right,
care for children.
Good.
You know, I mean, and I still do, I've retired now, but I still do agency work occasionally in schools, and I see what's happening nowadays. And the association, no less than the Association for School Leaders and University Leaders, which comprises of 20,000 head teachers, have written to the government asking the government fund more buildings.
Smaller classes.
Yes, and smaller classes. And they're pointing out that there's been 1,000 outbreaks as well. This is them.
It's 1,001. It's 1,001. We just found one in Hendon on the last call, Ben.
Well, they are. So I see this when I go into schools. I was in a school last week, and the children are sitting shoulder to shoulder, no masks, and breathing in each other's exhaled air with very poor ventilation. So therefore, those that apply outside of the schools seem to disappear as soon as you go through the school gate.
Was it a primary school or a secondary school, if you don't mind me asking?
Secondary. I mainly work in secondary.
No, so there's no excuse there for them being too young to follow all of the proceedings or too freaked out by them, which I have some sympathy for. You know, a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old.
Yes.
But not a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old.
And of course, that would, the economic effect of that would be, if you're a parent and you're working, a smaller child is more difficult to look after than a teenager who's 15, 16 years old, who can tackle and look after themselves.
Yeah, you'd think so, although Gilly's boy 16 and a half, and he tested positive on Saturday. So the petri dish nature of school seems to me to be both clear and deeply problematical. Did you speak to teachers? I presume you did. How I don't really...
Oh, I've taught myself. I know.
No, I mean now.
Oh yes, yeah, I have spoken to teachers, and they're frightened. They try their best to discipline, to a certain extent, keep a certain amount of discipline in the areas where masks are supposed to be used. And they try their best, but they're fighting a losing battle. Because children think they're immortal and there's nothing to happen.
46, 47 was the point where I began to acknowledge my own mortality. So it's not confined to children, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what's happening. I mean, I wrote a plan in March because I was concerned with the June opening. And I sent it to LBC, I sent it to yourself. I know you've got millions of emails.
I may well have read it. I mean, back in March, I wasn't here.
Yeah, I wrote it in March, and I've sent it just about to everybody. Politicians that I know in the opposition, I know quite well.
Of course.
I've sent it to them, I've sent it to everybody. Because it's common sense.
What would the headline be, Ben? What would be the single most important thing to do today?
Well, I mean, what's encouraging is the new saliva tests, which I recommended then. well, slightly more into the. I started off with 16 points. It's now 21 points because of in the light of experience of the saliva test becoming available. That is important because you can identify what's going on better than anything else.
In fact, everything comes back to test, trace and isolate, which is not a magic bullet, but it is the only way in which you can get.
That's it for now, ladies and gents.
That's why they spent £12 billion on it. Unfortunately, they then put Dodo Harding in. It would appear that things are lurching from bad to worse. But this week